There's an emotion that has quietly stolen more dreams, collapsed more potential, and redirected more lives than failure ever could. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It doesn't arrive with a warning. It simply shows up at every important moment, every door worth walking through, every risk worth taking, every version of yourself worth becoming, and whispers just convincingly enough that you step back instead of forward. That emotion is fear. And the most powerful people alive are not the ones who don't feel it. They are the ones who stopped letting it vote. Henderson spent the better part of a decade letting fear run his life, and he was so good at hiding it that almost nobody knew. From the outside, Henderson looked composed, measured, even confident in certain lights. He was articulate in meetings, reliable at work, pleasant in social settings. But underneath that surface was a man who had quietly arranged his entire life to avoid any situation where he might fail visibly, be judged openly, or want something badly enough that not getting it would genuinely hurt. Henderson had learned, somewhere along the way, that the safest way to live was to never fully extend, never fully commit, never want anything so loudly that the world could hear it and disappoint him. So Henderson played small, consistently, skillfully small. The promotion he was qualified for he didn't apply, telling himself the timing wasn't right. The business idea he had nursed for 2 years, he never launched it, telling himself he needed more preparation. The woman he had genuinely fallen for, he never told her and watched her drift toward someone bolder without saying a word. Every single time, Henderson had a reasonable explanation ready. Practical, logical, mature even. But underneath every explanation was the same thing, fear wearing the costume of wisdom. The slow burn started the year Henderson turned 38. It didn't begin with a single moment, but with an accumulation of small observations he couldn't stop noticing once he started. He began watching the people around him who were actually moving, actually building things, risking things, claiming things, and he noticed something that unsettled him deeply. They weren't fearless. Henderson could see it clearly now that he was looking. The colleague who launched her own firm had been visibly terrified at her leaving drinks. The friend who had moved across the world for a new life had confessed to Henderson over the phone that he had never been more scared of anything. The people Henderson had always assumed operated on a different emotional frequency than him. They didn't. They were afraid too. They just kept going anyway. That realization landed in Henderson quietly but didn't leave. It sat with him through weeks of ordinary life, surfacing at odd moments, in the shower on his commute, in the silence before sleep. If fear was universal, if everyone who had ever done anything worth doing had felt exactly what Henderson felt, then fear was not the problem. Fear was just the weather. The problem was that Henderson had been canceling every journey the moment clouds appeared. The final piece came from an unexpected direction. Henderson's younger nephew, 19 years old, gap year, unpolished and entirely unafraid, was visiting for a weekend and talking animatedly about a trip he was planning that had a dozen ways to go wrong. Henderson, instinctively, started listing the risks. The nephew looked at him with the uncomplicated honesty only 19-year-olds can deliver and said, "Uncle Henderson, you always know exactly why not to do something. Do you ever just do it anyway?" Henderson didn't answer, but he didn't forget it either. That question followed him for months. And gradually, Henderson began to practice something he had never deliberately tried before: action in the presence of fear. Not after the fear passed, not once he felt ready, in the presence of it. He started returning calls he had been putting off. He submitted work he felt wasn't perfect yet. He said things out loud that he had previously kept safely inside. And every single time the fear was there. But Henderson was there too, and Henderson was starting to be louder. Here is what Henderson learned and what the most powerful people already know. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is actually a compass. It almost always points directly at the thing that matters most, the thing with the highest stakes, the thing most worth doing. The people who master fear are not the ones who silence it. They are the ones who learn to read it correctly, as a signal that they are close to something real, not as a command to retreat. You will feel afraid. That is not the question. The question is whether you will feel afraid and move anyway. Because everything you actually want is sitting just on the other side of the thing that scares you most. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today.